Hello, welcome back to BS Live. Today I'm gonna talk about how to run Blender without UI. Sometimes people call it like headless Blender. So that's kind of strange if you never actually do that. But there's a couple of websites that I reference basically in order to make this to work. The first one is from carrot-carrot.com. There's a nice article here that kind of take you through how to set it up, um, because the idea is basically like this. I'm gonna give you an example. Normally, when you run Blender, you either you download Blender applications and then you save it into application folder. If you are on a Mac, that's normally how you do it. And then from here, you just run the applications. With Blender, you might have multiple versions of Blender 2.79, A, 2.79B, or 2.8, which is still like alpha. Normally, you can just run the app like this, just open it, but I normally like to go inside the package content and then just run it from here because you're gonna get a console. So it's kind of terminal and it's gonna load Blender. Oops, my screen has become dark now somehow. Yeah, so that's normally how you would run Blender, and then you work inside Blender. Let me go back. Okay, so this is Blender as normally like most Blender artists use it. You have the interface, the whole interface to work with. You work inside Blender like this, whatever you are doing, modeling, video editing, compositing, or game engine in the for Blender 2.79, etc. Do your model. Once you're done, you set up light, you set up camera, and you go inside the camera itself, and then you do a render. That's how you normally work. So you have Blender and you have nice interface to work with, and everything's nice. The output is normally gonna be a render or like a 3D objects that you can use in another package, or maybe animations. But what we are doing here, we're gonna try to use. So why is it so dark? Okay. So is it actually really hard to do? Let's see. I think the hardest part is for me to actually to make it work on the terminal, because this is unusual for me, and apparently you need to set up the correct path, because you can be in any folder. Currently I'm at the top root folder, and if I type in Blender, it just doesn't run because the path is incorrect, and because I might have multiple versions of Blender, also the paths need to be corrected which Blender I want to use. So the idea is, of course, to get into this Blender path. Let me try drag and drop that guy into this and then run it. Is apparently indeed this one actually wrote load. And if I'm not wrong, you can just try doing it like this, and then so now with this long path, indeed I can get to this Blender commands. And let's try to run it headless. So we did run the help, and if you really want to run it headless and then just let Blender do its thing, we can use this one, -B or -B, run it in the background, use for UI less rendering. So that's what normally Blender developer will do it. So Blender will run, it's doing its render, and then in the background you don't need to have the interface. And yeah, so let's have a look at the example. This one is taking you through. You can pass Python script. So the username here is Jenny, and then it's running this my script py. So that's kind of cool. Slightly complicated. What interesting, however, is the example from this guy right here. What's his name? Janakiv, Nikolai Janakiv. He has a lot of example on how to run Blender headlessly without UI, and then you're able to generate all this procedural stuff. This is really cool, and if I'm not wrong, I got he got this website called Parametric Cookie on Tumblr, and all of this is being generated without Blender UI. It's a little bit crazy if you think about it, but it's really cool because the way I personally like to work, really, if we run Blender, for example, let me do it how I like to work. Why suddenly it become dark? So we get this. I like to work using nodes. For example, Spreadshop. And if I ever need to use Python script, I'm just gonna do it over here. And here I can use generator. For example, if I want to have like funky stuff like this torus and polyline. Actually, not polyline. I think I'm looking at twisted torus. Oh yeah, this guy. This is not what I want. Sphere, I think. Yeah, okay. So this is how I like to work. Different interface, but this is all procedural, and I can still control all this. And if I need it, if I need these objects, I can render it out, or I can export it. So I like to work like this, and probably save the blend. Save as, I'm gonna save it on my root directory and sv torus. That's how I like to work. In different case, you want to work like without UI, like his example right here. So let's try doing that. Actually, I have downloaded a couple of his script, I think, somewhere here. Where did I save it? I think I have an example right here. So let's try running this blender donut.blend -b. So it's gonna run in the background and run this Python script. And then once it, let me try just run it, and it does run, and saving the render as blah 8. So let me explain to you what's actually happening. So the output is going to be something in the render. So I got a couple of things here. This is the last one that I just created, blah 8. Basically a donut with a rainbow color light. So how does it work actually? So let me show you again the command. So Blender, run it in the background, work on this donut.blend, and run this script. So this is like more like a once-off command in the command line, and it's running this myscript.py. If I open Sublime Text, I have Sublime Text over here, and in here we can see the usual Python script that you see inside Blender. And I have this utils. Utils is actually a Python module from this guy. And here I'm using one of his utils, rainbow light. This one generate rainbow light. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna comment this out, so it's not gonna generate rainbow light. And for the render, I'm just gonna save it as blah 9. So let me do that again. Run the same command. It's gonna run a different script, and the output is gonna be blah9.png, which is supposed to be here, but then I'm using Mac OS beta, so it's not updating properly. But the result is here. This guy now only have the lighting from the blend. The blend itself, if I show it to you, let me open Blender. So that's the name of the file is donut.blend. Okay, file open, donut.blend. So this is the file. This guy actually have a torus, the torus that's being generated by Spherechalk. And what I did here, see, if I'm changing the major radius and the minor radius, you can see it's changing the thickness and the radius of the donut. You can see this command. This is the Python command that you can actually just execute it here inside Blender, or you can execute it outside. In this case, I'm putting the script over here, so I can change at any time. I can change this number and then save it as blah 10, render it 500 by 500 pixel, and let me prove it to you. This one has already light, a bunch of light, so I'm gonna change it to different color. Something like that, green and orange, very strange light color. I'm saving it. Now if I run this again, same command, saving it as blah.png. So if I open this using Preview app, here you go. You get the donut. You got the drill here. So let me try 0.4, and this one maybe 1.25. Save it again. Run this again. It's gonna override my donuts. So we got a different donuts. And if I comment this out, this is utils.rainbow light. This will generate rainbow light. And let's run this command once again. It's done. Open Preview app. Now we get the donuts with the rainbow light. So this is the cool thing that's happening in the background. It doesn't save the blend. Of course, you can save the blend every time you make a different changes. But yeah, everything is running in the background without the Blender UI itself. It's a little bit strange once again. But here, let me show it to you. If I am running the rainbow lights inside Blender, it's generating this rainbow light. This is the utils from Janakiv. But he has a lot of example also, like in his script there is all these metaballs, simple sphere, etc. He actually he got two GitHub that you can study. One is Cookie Factory, the other one is this Blender scripting. So this is where you should start. You can basically run all this script with headless, like this, for example, parametric torus, etc. I think I get this example somewhere already in my hard drive, but you just download the script. Let me show it to you anyway. You get all these example that you should try yourself, change the parameter, etc. You can generate all this without actually opening in Blender, because it's using the Python script and in the run the Blender in the background. So for example, this Pilotaxis flower, let me try this, just drag it into this folder. So Pilotaxis flower, let me try to run the script. Pilotaxis flower. So it does run, and if I'm not wrong, it's gonna do a render. Pilotaxis one might be a little bit slow. It's doing a lot of things. So the whole script looks something like this, and it's gonna render 50 frames of Pilotaxis flower. This is the whole script. I think the whole script can also be run inside Blender, but it's running in the background. I can stop it at any time. If I check my preview app and look under frames, you can see this is generating these animations on the fly. So really, personally, I will do this using SphereChalk add-on or SphereChalk nodes inside Blender, but this is just another way of how you can work and generate this procedural, beautiful parametric render, headless, or even doing it inside Blender. Just doing it here with script, text editor, and just run it. Currently, I think if I just copy and paste the script over here, this is a Python script. If I delete everything, including SphereChalk nodes, run the script, it's basically gonna do the same thing. It's gonna do the render. So let me stop this really quick. Control Z. And I'm gonna also turn off Blender here. All right, so why do people actually like to run Blender headlessly? If it's on like a single computer, running Blender without UI, it's like doing render in the background. It's gonna make the render a bit faster. But imagine if you can send this command, for example, to the cloud. Maybe you have some kind of cloud setup, like a Google Cloud kind of thing. Like they call it Kubernetes or something. So basically, you set up a virtual computer on the cloud, and then you install Blender over there, and you can actually run something like this for that single computer on the cloud, or like 100 or 1,000 computer, or unlimited number of Blender on the cloud. Or if you have like multiple computer, also you can run Blender this way. And currently, what I've been doing is that I've been, for example, telling Blender to open this blend files called a donut with a SphereChalk donut setup, and then run the script and then do a render. But what's really cool is that with a command line, you can also provide some kind of argument. So argument with different variables. So the idea is that instead of keep changing the script, you can just provide argument. Like for example, if I can set it up so like it's taking radius, small radius 0.5 and bigger radius 2.5. This ideally it should take the inputs, and then so it's kind of making Blender itself as a node. So if I try to draw it, let me open Blender. We'll try doing a quick painting. So tools, paint, stroke, paint curve. Okay, this one. So treating blend as a node. So you are here and you're providing input, and it's going to be the output. The output can be, as usual, can be a render or can be 3D objects. So the blend itself can contain the whole thing. So instead of being inside Blender and then you are using the interface, you're really just sending a commands like a yeah. So that's the idea. If we go back to the torus, of course, like I say, this is the how I usually been working using nodes. But if I try maybe, okay, torus node and then polyline viewer, this one will generate curve, right? But it doesn't really matter. Let's close this. We can have something like that. So all these attributes can be changed using script, all this, and you can render this out headlessly. So maybe I'll do that before I close this video. I'm still getting used to all this headless Blender situation. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Copy. I'm gonna save this. Paste the command. Okay, that's a lot. That's too much. I'm gonna copy this. So this is radius, smaller radius, P and Q. So we get this. If I go to my Sublime text and I get my script over here, I can comment that out. So I have this new one. I'm gonna render out as blah 10. Everything else can be the same, or I just command this out. Okay, go back to this guy, run my donut blend. So Blender run in the background, save it as blah review, have a look into my rendering folder. Okay, I got this guy right here. Go back to Sublime Text. We have this. I'm gonna make a quick change. So 0.5. This one 1.2. This one 3 and 6. Run this again. So Blender doesn't need to. These guys just change on the fly. Save. Run the command again. And this guys should change. I think it's does it change? Maybe it does, but I didn't see. Okay, so it does work. But like I said, it's a little bit can be slightly tricky. Of course, you need to know what you're doing. It's not just like you're sending these commands and you without seeing the result right away. That's why, like I think nodes is the way I like to work with. But then again, headlessly, it's kind of cool and definitely can work. You see, the original, the blend itself doesn't change. It stay how it looks like this, and I like to work with the nodes. That's why I get the preview right away. So ideally, really, the whole things what I've been talking about, all this node stuff, and then try to run without the UI. Everything like ideally should work in a way that you can make a quick change and interactively, and then you get a result right away. Whether you want it to as a render or export as OBJ for other 3D package, or in near future we should be able to export as AR, export as USDZ, for example, if it's for iOS. With the USDZ, you can then send it to anyone who doesn't understand 3D, and they can just open it and then look at it in 3D. So that's gonna be my next step. Um, so the whole running Blender without UI thing is really one day you can just like tell, okay, you can call Siri and then create a shortcut. You can tell Siri create donuts, or Siri create twisted torus node with radius, major radius of what number and minor radius or whatever you specify. um, and then Siri will generate the objects for you, and then you can look at it as AR in real time, interactive, and whether you want to use like a voice command or you just type it like normally, or even using notes. So this should be like the way we're gonna work with 3D maybe in the future.